Hello everybody, and welcome back to more The Division. So, now that I've hit max level, I figured it's a perfect time to update my opinions on the game, and also show you guys some Dark Zone stuff. In fact, all of the background footage that you're going to see in this video is from the Dark Zone. And I want to talk about the Dark Zone, because previously, when I did my last video, I hadn't done it yet, and now that I have, it's probably worth it to actually go into detail. So just as a quick update of what the Dark Zone is, and like a general synopsis, is it's an optional PvP zone where you're able to gather really good loot at the expense of potentially losing it and losing Dark Zone experience. So if you look at the top right, you have two XP bars. You have the gold one, which is my general XP. That's the XP that I've gotten from beating the game. I'm level 30, which is max level. And then the purple one is your Dark Zone experience, which currently I'm level 17. You actually get Dark Zone XP really quickly. Pretty sure the max is 50, and at level 30 you can really start getting gear. You can start buying the gear from the vendors at Dark Zone 30, and you can also open chests and stuff like that with Dark Zone keys. So how is this an optional PvP thing? Because you would think a game that is MMO-like. I'm not sure if I would call this game an MMO, but it technically is. Would have just a normal PvP thing where you just go kill players. Well, it's not like that. It's kind of, I say kind of loosely, like DayZ or H1Z1 or Ark. Games that have that tension in multiplayer where if you see another player, they might try to kill you and they might not. Generally speaking, they do, and those games turn into a kill on sight kind of thing, and it actually completely removes any of that tension of seeing another player, because you know that they're just going to try to kill you, so you try to kill them. Whereas in the Dark Zone, that it makes it so that tension remains, because it dissuades you from doing the PvP in the first place. And I will talk about that in a minute, but you have this situation where there are PvE enemies in the Dark Zone that when you kill, they drop a loot. That loot is quote-unquote contaminated, where you have to extract it with a helicopter, which means you have to call the helicopter in. Every player in the area can see that happening. Then, once it gets there, it drops a rope down, and you put your gear onto that rope. The problem with that rope is it only has 4 slots on it, so 4 people can extract all of their items. So if you have a group of 10 people waiting for an extraction to happen, only 4 of them can extract, which can lead to some tension with whether or not you're actually going to extract, or should you just wait and go somewhere else, and stuff like that. And generally speaking, you're going to have some people who try to kill you when you're extracting. And oftentimes, if you had just gotten into the Dark Zone after maybe taking a break, and all of your buddies just got online, and now you guys are in the Dark Zone, you haven't picked up any items, you don't have anything to lose, so you might attack them, you might not. But why does the game dissuade you from PvP? Well, I would say it's a twofold thing. The first is how they do it. Well, they do it by, when you die, you drop items that you have picked up in the Dark Zone. You also you lose some of your money, you lose some of your Dark Zone keys, which you use to open up the chests once you hit 30, and you drop so much of your Dark Zone levels that it's almost not worth it to try to PvP, because if you die, you're going to lose so much of your progress. It's actually really painful. It's a painful loss to have that happen. So the reason they do it is because they don't want that kill on sight PvP thing to happen, as happens in DayZ and stuff like that, where generally the game just turns into a deathmatch and they remove all that PvP tension. It does a really good job of dissuading the PvP, and it does a good job of keeping you from just trying to kill everybody on sight. But the downside to it is it does it in such a way that if you just die normally, you're going to lose so much of your stuff. It's not worth it. I mean, the thing is, if you hit Dark Zone 30, where you can open up these chests, and then you open up the chests, you get a few items, someone attacks you and you die, and you drop below Dark Zone 30, then you can't open that chest anymore, and you've kind of lost that progress, and it is pretty painful. This is why running in a group of 4 or 3, I would say 3 minimum, would help to dissuade the PvP, or any people who might go rogue against you and try to steal your items, because at that point, your group is big enough of a threat that if they die, they don't want to lose their items either, and you are actually threatening them by just having a large group. If you have 3 or 4 of you, they're not going to want to attack you because they know that if they do, they may die and lose all their items. So that's just the general way that the dissuading of PvP works. It does it too well, though, in my opinion. It does it in such a way that if you wanted to do the PvP and you wanted that tension, you're not going to find a lot of it in the Dark Zone at level 30 because of that. Nobody wants to lose their stuff. And you would think that maybe that would also happen in DayZ, because in DayZ your character dies and you lose all your stuff, and that all of that stuff is basically gone unless you spawn nearby. The problem with it is in those games, that's the only thing you're losing is your items and your gear and your progress. But in this, because your character is persistent and you're not starting a new character, it means that, in fact, if that were the case, if it just killed your character, nobody would really ever PvP, because actually nobody would enter the Dark Zone at that point because it takes so long to get to level 30 to begin with, it's a good thing that doesn't happen. So is the Dark Zone any fun with all that in mind? I would say yes, it's absolutely fun. I was just kind of trying to point out all the bad about it before I raved on about the good, but I think the good things about it are that it's an interesting way of doing an end game where it's optional. You don't have to do this stuff. You can go get loot by doing just PvE stuff, but it's a risk-reward thing. You can quickly get loot from the Dark Zone to get you high enough to probably go do some of the much harder PvE stuff. But you have the chance of losing some progress and all that. And unless you're playing with friends, I don't think Dark Zone's fun if you're running by yourself. I would only suggest running with at least 2 other people to get a group of 3 going. And that's hard for some people because you don't necessarily always have friends that are playing the same games as you, or maybe necessarily want to drop $60 on a game that they're not sure about, even though you may think it's fun. So it's interesting because you may not ever have friends to play with, and then you have to go into the Dark Zone solo if you want to play it, and it's just not as fun that way. But yeah, the Dark Zone is a lot of fun if you're playing with friends. That being said, I think it's time to talk about the rest of the game, because the end game on this is interesting. You have the Dark Zone, and then you have the missions that you do leveling up, like the story missions, and you could do those on hard or challenging, which are a couple difficulty modes. And the challenging is actually really difficult, but that's where you're going to get the yellow items, the high-end gear, or at least one of the ways to do it. And by doing those missions, you're getting Phoenix Bucks, which are the ways to purchase those items, or the schematics to make those yellow items. So that being said, it's that interesting. You have the PvP way to get gear, you have the PvE way to get gear, but both of the ways get you pretty good gear, and both of the ways are completely valid for gear obtaining. But the thing with it is that you're doing those missions that you've already done leveling up over and over and over again. It's not like at the moment at launch they have the dungeons, which are their incursions. They don't have that yet. So when they get those in the game, those are going to be very, very difficult, and they're probably going to drop some really, really good gear. But how many are there going to be? Because at the current time, if you look at the map, I think there's only one sitting on the map that's hey, this will be coming in an update. So worst case scenario, let's assume that they add one incursion. Is that enough end game to keep you playing? Probably not. That's coming a month after the launch of the game. It's nice to have an update pretty soon after where they're giving you some content to do, but if it's one incursion, that would be the worst. Let's assume that it might be 2 or 3. That's a bit better. That extends that lifeline to the next update. And as they go throughout the summer, they're going to be launching their expansions, which will release story content, which then means that those story missions will either be turned into incursions or hard mode and challenge mode, like, you know, story missions that you can do at max level to get Phoenix dollars. But does that mean that they're adding more loot? Like, I don't know. I do know that with the incursions, they're adding set gear, so that way you can kind of like create the character that you want to create. Like, do you really like using medical stuff? Then you can probably find a set for that, so on and so forth. So, like, what's the end game of this game? Is it worth it? I think at launch, if you played pretty consecutively, the content would last you about a week. It's not saying a lot. I mean, that's pretty sparse. If you wanted to like collect all of the collectibles and stuff, that could extend that to about 2 weeks. Unless you did that leveling up, then it technically extends it to about 2 weeks anyways. And then with the incursions, that adds a couple weeks onto it. So I think either way, as you go throughout this first year of the game, you're gonna have content dry stuff. You're gonna have dry points where you're probably not playing the game because you've done everything, or you have all the gear that you want. And the same thing happened to Destiny, and then the expansion, like the major expansion, came out and kind of changed a bit of that. But from my understanding, people are still kind of running into the same issue, and it's just it's an MMO issue more than anything else. But is that a bad thing? Is that a bad thing to only play the game like every couple months when new content comes out? Not necessarily. That's the way I play Diablo, and I play Diablo every single time a new season starts. So, I mean, it would be really cool for me if the Diablo patches coincided in between the content drops for the Division. So, like, I get a Division patch, I play that until I'm done with it. Then a couple weeks later or a week later, I get, you know, a new season for Diablo. I play that for a month or two. Then the new Division stuff comes out. Like, that would be the perfect loop for me, but I don't think that will necessarily happen. It's a cool idea though, and I do like the fact that it's a game that I will constantly come back to. And that's the thing, right? Like, I enjoy the game enough, and now that I've hit max level, I can say that the game is really good, and so is the story, and I'm really attached to the story. I'm excited to see what happens next, because the game is fun, and I like it. So it is going to keep me coming back, and I think that's a really big distinction to make, whether or not, you know, if you haven't picked up the game yet, and you are interested in it, now that I've hit max level, I can say, yeah, the game is really fun, and if you haven't picked it up, you probably should, especially if you have friends playing it. If you don't have friends playing it, then you're kind of missing out on a chunk of content. You can matchmake for the dungeons and stuff, but it's hard to matchmake for the Dark Zone because you have people on your team that could turn and kill you, and they might, in fact, that's a completely legitimate Dark Zone strategy, is to get a group of players together, get them a ton of good gear. When they're like, oh man, I just got this awesome yellow item, you're like, sweet, that's really cool. You start extracting, you kill them, you take that yellow item, and you extract it. Like, that's a completely legitimate strategy, and I like that it is, because it gives you the freedom to do that, but my point is that it's really hard to matchmake for the Division multiplayer, like, PvP stuff, because it's always going to end up to the point where people are going to try to backstab you, or you're going to have people who are like, put you in a situation where they're trying to make it seem like they're not gonna go against you, and then they have like another group of players that they know come in and kill you, and then they pick up their loot. So you're always gonna have that situation in these types of like tense multiplayer stuff, but at the end of the day, it's not a bad thing, because that's the way that multiplayer works in these situations, and it's just better to have friends. So if you have friends playing the game, pick it up. It's totally worth it. If you're really interested in that, like, Tom Clancy story stuff that they do, where it's got the militaristic story where, you know, it's like a situation where the military, or like a special division, in this case the Division, has to step in and take control of a situation, and then there's military intrigue where, you know, maybe some people have gone rogue and some haven't, and you don't know really who to trust, like that kind of story. If you're really into that kind of stuff, which I know a lot of people are, because the Tom Clancy books sell like hotcakes, then yeah, I think you would really enjoy it. The story player, or the single player story aspect of it, at the very least. But yeah, that's my updated thoughts. I still enjoy the game. In summary, I think I enjoy it a lot more now that I've hit max level. Will I continue to play it? I'll continue to do the content as it comes out, and if I run out of content to do, then I'll stop playing it. I don't feel bad for doing that. I'll wait with bated breath to get new content, and as I do, then I'll finish it again, stop playing, and come back to it. And it's going to be one of those games for me. It's going to be my next Diablo game. Is it going to replace Diablo? No, because I love Diablo, but you know, I like looter games, and I'm a huge RPG guy, as you guys know. So the fact that it's kind of blending good RPG mechanics with good loot, you know, stuff, then it's like it's my kind of game. And I'm really into it. With that being said, though, if you have any questions on how the Dark Zone works or how the end game works, I will gladly answer them now that I've put a lot more time into it. And by the time this video goes up, I'll put even more time into it. And, you know, as expansions come out throughout the year, maybe I'll take a look at them and see how they're going and give you guys an updated look on that. I might do one more video just showing you guys the PvE stuff and how that all works. Aside from that, I think I've covered the game fairly extensively, and you guys can probably get a very good idea of what it's like. But with that, we shall see you guys next time.